Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Valerie Wonder. I'm the Communications Director for Reynoldsburg City Schools. We are going to run a town hall to talk about the bond issue that's coming up on November 2nd. And there will be a presentation, and then we will have time to ask questions. And then we'll wrap things up at 7 o'clock, so we want to respect everybody's time. There's paper and pens if you want to take notes or ask questions or write your questions down. And we are not requiring masks to be worn, but if you want to, obviously you can. Just please social distance, so we can keep everybody healthy. I would also like to just introduce some folks that are here from the Board of Education as well as our administration. So Ms. Deborah Dunlap, she's our president of the Board of Education. Ms. Questenberry, board member. We have at the far right, Ms. Jamie Wilson. She's our HR director. Ms. Tammy Miller, she's our treasurer. She might pop down here if we have any finance questions. Dr. Jocelyn Cosgrave, she's our chief academic officer. Mr. David Baker, he's our assistant superintendent. And Ms. Jamie Scott, who is our director of student services. So this is also being recorded, so we will have this up on our website in a few days in case anybody wants to watch it again, or maybe if you want to tell somebody, hey, you didn't get a chance to come, it'll be on our website as well. So again, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brown, who is our superintendent, and Mr. Chris Reed, who is our executive director of business.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I feel like I don't need this. Before I get started, I want to recognize our two city council members who are joining us today as well. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your support. Can you guys hear this? Okay. Obviously, today we're here to talk about the bond issue that's coming up and to talk about some of the things we have to tackle that are making this a necessity, something we need to have happen. We're going to have a quick little PowerPoint presentation just to walk through some pieces of it and then open up for questions. Our plan is called the Plan for Our Future. We always open every presentation, any presentation, with our mission statement, which is empowering leaders who impact the now and innovate the future. And that's what this entire project is about. We're not looking to have a fix that's going to last for 3 to 5 years. We want something that's going to last 50 to 60 years. And that's how we've actually looked at this particular project. As we look at things right now, our current situation limits us in some ways, that some of our facilities limit the types of things and opportunities we can give to our kids. You happen to be in a building that is 153 years old, which is amazing. And anything we do to upgrade this building or replace this building, what have you, we want to make sure we're also able to commemorate it in the right way and honor the person for which it's named. Hannah Ashton was a phenomenal educator who has such an impact on our district, and we want to respect that fact with anything we do going forward. Given that, this building is facing some serious critical and structural needs in terms of, if you look around at the ceiling, those are all, that stuff's based on water damage. So those are real things. We didn't just create those for the spectacle of actually seeing them. Those are things we deal with on a yearly basis, and they happen all over the building. We look forward to taking you on some tours so you can see the insides of classrooms, which will give you more context in terms of what that looks like. The bottom line for us is our kids deserve an equal opportunity to do anything that they want to do in life, period. And that's our mission in terms of what we want to do every single day, is to provide for our kids those opportunities, every single one of our kids. Currently, our kids are at a bit of a disadvantage because they don't get a full-day kindergarten program when they start their scholastic career. That's something that is very near and dear to my heart. I know it's near and dear to our board's heart. We want to see that come to fruition for our students so their future can be even brighter, and we get an opportunity for their scholastic careers to start off with a full-day experience, which is substantially different than a half-day. That's something we really look forward to. So what is the plan for our future? 3 particular phases that we need to highlight tonight. We talked a little bit about this particular building and the serious needs that we need to confront and address, providing full-day kindergarten district-wide, and then aligning our facilities based on our mission. That's something we want to talk about as well. And what that really means, just to give you an example of what that means. Currently, our 5th grade is in middle school. I think the vast majority of educators would agree with me that we need to get 5th grade into elementary school where it belongs. That's something we want to see happen. That would be part of this project as well. You want to jump on that?
Sure. So obviously responding to the needs of this building, Dr. Brown talked about the age of this building, but when we look at a facility plan from a district standpoint, but also specifically to this building, 3 years ago we received a cost of just under $18 million to take care of all of the needs of this facility. That's roofing, that's facade, that's ADA compliance, it's water, it's everything. Keep in mind that $18 million was 3 years ago. We can imagine what that cost has done. It hasn't gone down. And one of the things that we really want to key on is that $18 million does not fix some of the foundational problems with this building. If you're a young woman having class on the 3rd floor, you have to go walk down to the 2nd floor to use the restroom. That is a waste of time. We want our kids to be in the classroom as much as humanly possible, and that is just that walk is a waste of time. Every second counts for our kids. And I'll be going through some pictures. One of the things that we really need to stress is some of these pictures were taken before school started. We are fully within code. We have passed every fire inspection and every building inspection to operate this year. It's a safe building. That being said, as I flip through some of these pictures, you will see what we call in the industry water infiltration. Water infiltration, say that 3 times fast, is when water gets wherever it wants to get. So as we look around in here, we can actually see brick. That is our external brick. And the issue with that is the only fix is fixing the outside first and then fixing the inside. But to coincide with that is you also have to fix the roof. So facade work, which is all of our brickwork outside, and roof work, which would need entire replacements, that 3 years ago was $9 million for those 2 items. So we're looking at about $11 million now. That's a lot of money to put into a building this old. Like Dr. Brown mentioned, FullDay Kindergarten, I'll let him jump on this a little bit more.
We know that the importance of getting a good start to our scholastic career is crucial to our kids and their futures. As our community continues to evolve and change, the needs change with that. And so many of our kids need this type of experience when they start out in kindergarten. The educational benefits are almost, we can get research to show you that there's a huge difference between a full day program implementation and that of a half day. We currently have full day in 2 of our elementary schools that we were able to carve out some space. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that even if we wanted to do full day kindergarten tomorrow, which we'd love to do, we simply don't have the space to do it. And that this plan will help us to address some of that. We talked earlier about support for our families. It can be difficult for families of a kindergarten student to send their kid to school from, say, 8 to 12, and then have that kid come home on a bus, and then you've got to hustle home from work to meet him, or you have to pay for daycare. A full day program allows us to keep some resources in our parents' pockets, so they are in a position to be able to afford the things they need to make their lives sustainable and to get our kids a quality full day experience while they're with us. Their social and emotional development, we talked about that from K through 12. We want to make sure we're attuned to all those issues as far as our kids are concerned. And we think the earlier we can get them services, whatever those services might be, the better off they're going to be in the long term. So a full day program allows us to do that. And an early intervention with supplemental services for our students with special needs. We talk a lot about equity in our district, and we talk about it from a very authentic standpoint. We want every kid to have an opportunity to be successful, regardless of his or her background, or regardless of whatever obstacles he or she has to overcome. This is one area that we need to make sure we're able to provide that for every single kid who needs it. That's near and dear to everyone's heart, and we work really hard to make sure we can ensure that. Our kids in a half-day program don't necessarily get the types of services we'd like to give them. Yes, we do what's legal, we do what's necessary, but we want to do more because we know that the need is more. And in order to get that need addressed, we need to get our kids in the building.
Okay. Yeah, this would be me, so we're bouncing back and forth. So Dr. Brown touched on this a little bit, but one of the things that is lacking in this building is the ability to use technology like a lot of our other buildings. Because of our very thick walls, we have some infrastructure issues. Mrs. Coley was on Lowdown with Dr. Brown earlier. District Lowdown with Dr. Brown. Sorry. And talked about, if you're ever in one of our classrooms in this building, you'll see that there's no wiring in the walls because they're so thick. So there's a lot of things that we're restricted from in this building to giving these students an equitable education. And those are things that we just can't fix. So again, aligning our facilities with our mission. Dr. Brown talked about our early childhood and elementary experience. Our fifth grade and middle school, obviously he mentioned that a little bit as well. Right now we have our fifth grade at 3 buildings. We've got a Wagner Middle, Baldwin Road Junior, and this building. Fifth grade is much better to be pulled out and put in a building with elementary kids. And then obviously middle and high school, this takes our middle school to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and our high school remains the same, 9 through 12. So bond 2021, what if it passes? So obviously the first need is replacing this building. And when I say replacing this building, I don't mean tear this down and build something else in its place. We don't have the luxury of doing that. We don't have any swing space in the district for kids to go for 3 years. So the question was, explain swing space. Swing space is, where do the kids in this building go if we had to tear it down before we built? Right now in Reynoldsburg, we don't have that. Some communities have, not abandoned, but not used commercial spaces they can use and those types of things. And actually, I was just driving by on Bryce a little bit earlier, and they're tearing down Kmart. That would be the only building that's big enough to handle our size. It's not there anymore. So obviously, getting a newer, up-to-date middle school is ideal. We'll talk about the location here in a moment. Build a new early learning center. This early learning center would house preschool and kindergarten, and obviously all the things that Dr. Brown already talked about. But this building would look very different. When I think about I've got 3 kids. My oldest is in middle school, but my youngest is in elementary and in preschool, and my second is in 3rd grade. And I know that when my daughter, who's now in 3rd grade, first got into kindergarten, the size of the building was overwhelming for her. So the ability to build a building that shrinks everything down to something that's more manageable for a preschool kid or a kindergarten kid is very, very important. For instance, we're in a gym right now. A gym for preschool and K doesn't need to have a full basketball court. It can be fit to their needs specifically. That's really what my job is with the district, is to meet our kids where they're at and support the academic side as much as possible. So, and obviously some other things, upgrade electrical and technology systems and all of that. So when we look at, and I want to see what the next slide is, I apologize. We're going to go back to this one. One of the other nice things about what we have is we have land. So when you ask the question, where do we have enough land to build a middle school? Well, we have enough land out at our Summit campus to build a middle school. We're looking at between 800 student and 1,000 student building. That's something that would be decided in the design phase come, fingers crossed, November 2nd. And then the Early Learning Center would actually be built on the location just outside this building. There's a lot of green space between here and Graham Road, and that's where that building would be located. What if this does not pass? Unfortunately, the harsh reality of $18 million, which is probably more than that, is it's got to come from somewhere. So we wouldn't be able to expand a full-day kindergarten. We would have to draw funds away from the general fund. 5th grade would stay where it's at, and we'd continue to face the barriers that we currently have. So some of the quick overview of the details. Did you want to touch on something?
One thing I want to jump into. We talked about honoring Hannah Ashton Middle School and the legacy of Hannah Ashton. We've discussed, and obviously this is something that would be up for approval, but we're interested in doing an early learning center, potentially naming it the Hannah Ashton Early Learning Center, and using pieces of this building as constructed and building them into the brand new building so we can actually honor some of the history within it. There's some pieces that we know we can claim or restore or mimic that would be like what the original facade of this looks like. And I know we have some pictures in the slides that will show you the original building, because what you see on the outside is not the original building. That's not what it looked like.
So some of the details, if we look at this, this is our first bond issue in 13 years. That's a while. A lot of districts are on every 5 years for a bond, depending on growth. This is a 4.9 mil bond and PI issue. What that means is, obviously we know what a bond is, but a PI is a permanent improvement. So any leftover funds would be put into a permanent improvement fund, which would be used to help keep up all the buildings of the district in the future. Obviously November 2 is election day. Please show up and vote. And then what we had discussed a little bit is the $14 per $1,000 of home value. Now I will say, don't use your home value that you see on like Zillow and other ones. That's what you can get, but that's not what is used. What is used is the county auditor. So $14 per 100,000 of home value. That's $14 per month. So again, I want to look at this just briefly. On the left-hand side of this, you can see the property out at Summit Campus. You'll see a yellow arrow that actually points to where the proposed football field is going to be. Obviously, we are one high school, 2 campuses, and football is at Livingston, so we have plenty of land. Flipping over to the right side, this is actually a satellite image of the land between Hannah Ashton and Graham Road. You can see that the size of the Summit campus, or Reynoldsburg High School Summit campus, if it were dropped in that location, it would destroy some buildings, but obviously we're not doing that. It just shows that there's a lot of land there. We have the land to build. So some frequently asked questions, and Dr. Brown can jump in if he'd like, but open enrollment is always a hot topic in this district, and I think it's because it's a little misunderstood. Something that I want to stress is Reynoldsburg City Schools has been a capped district, meaning that after a certain point, every new student that we get that is a resident student, that is, who lives in Reynoldsburg, we get no funding for. So what we have done, and this was years ago, is we've allowed open enrollment students to come in. And what that means is if there is an open seat in a classroom, we look to fill that seat. We don't displace Reynoldsburg students or Reynoldsburg community students out of those seats. So that's very important to think about. So last year we had 661 open enrollment students, and 69% of those were at the middle and high levels. And when we distribute out the amount of open enrollment that were in the elementary total, it's about 35 students per elementary building.
Going to go a little bit deeper on what open seats look like. So let's say we have an elementary building with a classroom that's set up for 25 students, which for the most part, that's what our elementary schools can absorb for the most part. Let's say, however, we only have 20 students enrolled for that class. What that allows us to do, and everybody's in seats, what that allows us to do is invite 5 kids for open enrollment to actually fill those other 5 seats, and we still haven't added any space, we haven't added any capacity, we haven't added any staff, but we've gained some funds that help us deal with the fact that we're capped, and we lose roughly $4 million, is it? Tammy will know better. How much do we lose from the cap? Around $6 million a year that we should get that we don't because we're a capped district. This helps to absorb some of that, so we end up getting, and you're going to talk about that dollar figure, about $3.5 million total. So those kids, those 5 kids I just spoke about, would give us about $6,600 per student. That allows us to kind of eat up some of that deficit we end up getting, that we should be getting otherwise.
And just to round this off, like Dr. Brown said, it's a $3.5 million generated from for classroom instruction through open enrollment. And that $3.5 million is approximately the equivalent to 4 mil operating levy, just to kind of put some equation on, or some equal on it. So we talked about this a little bit before, but I want to briefly go down what the district would look like post-construction. This would be, with the passage on the 2nd, these buildings would be ready for August of 2024. It only takes about 15 months to build a building from dirt to opening. And what this would do, obviously we talked about this, we'd have a preschool and full-day kindergarten at the Hannah J. Ashton Early Learning Center. That would be pending approval from the board to name it that. We would have now 7 elementary schools. Right now we have 6. We're not building one, but what this would allow us to do in building another middle school, which we'll talk about there at the bottom, is Wagner Road Middle would be turned into an elementary school. With the moving down to the middle, which is 6 to 8, the addition of what we're going to call Summit Road because it's on Summit campus, the addition of an 800 to 1,000 student building takes a lot of load off of those other buildings that have the 5th grade in it. So we can put 5th grade and disperse those amongst the 7 elementary buildings. A typical question we have is, how are schools funded? I'll go to the bottom and then you can see the graph. I'll go over that really briefly. But our last bond issue, bond means construction, was in 2008. And this is something that's actually really interesting to me, is that our last operating levy was in 2010. I've lived in districts where it's every 2 years. So the ability for this district on all assets, all facets, but big kudos to our treasurer for going now 11 years without asking for more money. So fantastic. Just very briefly, the green slice is our federal funding. That's 9%. The light blue is our non-tax local percentage at 18%. Our tax is at 33%, and then our largest chunk is through state funding, which is 40%. How does this impact your budget? We kind of spoke on that a little bit, but the home value is based on the county auditor, not market value. Obviously, right now is a seller's market, but it's gone off the county auditor. I'll jump down. The second one, 35% of home valuable is your taxable amount. So you don't want to say that you have a $200,000 home and multiply that through the equation, because that's going to get you a really high number. It's actually only 35%. So that equals, like we said earlier, $14 per $100,000 would be the cost monthly. So for example, a $200,000 home here in Reynoldsburg would be $28 more per month. Here's that picture we talked about, and Dr. Brown mentioned it, but what you see now is not the original building. What you see now outside was 1925. This picture was taken, it was a 100-year celebration of the inauguration of George Washington. Pretty neat. If you want to see that picture, we can get that for you. Some of the signs are very, very neat, very historic. It's actually right out, I believe, in the front hallway. But this building is absolutely beautiful. Obviously, with the 1-year design plan, building a Hannah J. Ashton Early Learning Center, we would want to pay homage to the building and to the person. Obviously, the building would be much bigger than this, but this is an absolutely gorgeous building that you just don't see that often anymore. So I think it'd be great for this community. And unless I forgot something, Dr. Brown, I think that's everything.
I think the really interesting part about that picture, which I love, is the fact when I first saw it, I was blown away because I had never seen that building before. I was superintendent here. I'm walking in this building. That's not what it looks like. That's not what I see on the outside. That picture tells you what the original looked like. And those are things we can either duplicate or mimic, or pieces from that we can claim once we start bringing some of this down and build into the new Early Learning Center. That's exciting to me. Valerie, you going to do questions?
So thank you again, everybody, for coming. We have time for questions. We have a lot of different folks in the room that can answer questions. And again, this is being recorded, so there might be somebody watching who has a question that you might ask. So who has questions? Can you please come down to this microphone and we'll have you ask it in there. Thank you. And if you can just tell us your name and your address so we just can have an idea of where you're from.
Russ Ridgeway. I'm a sub for the school district part of the time.
And he's coming in representing. You see that?
I'm the sub with the dog, if you don't know. So for full-day kindergarten, a lot of kids, if they haven't been in preschool, isn't that a lot of stress for a child to now be going full day to school, and has that been taken into account?
Great question. So with our preschool program, if we're able to get this project completed and successful, we'd be able to expand what our preschool offerings look like as well. We'd have space to do that. So many more kids could get a full day before they come to kindergarten. Because we want to try to look at education as a pre-K-12 continuum, not just a K-12 continuum.
Okay, but that's going to be an additional financial burden to families.
No, because that actually will already be built into the building. That space is going to be available already.
No, I mean, you got to pay for preschool, right?
So that'll be an additional relief for families because they wouldn't have to necessarily pay for that.
Okay. The area of Hannah J. Ashton that is new and doesn't have all the facility issues that the older portion does, is that going to be continue to be used or demolished? Or is,
The plan would be that this entire building would come down.
okay.
There's some other parts of that. We have met with the Reynoldsburg-Truro Township Historical Society, and obviously they're taxpayer funded, so they're not going to say yes or no to this, but they fully support this building coming down. There are things, like you said, that we can use. You know, it was just, 4 years ago we did an HVAC project. A lot of these things can be put to use on other buildings. So, long answer, but that's the best I've got.
Okay, and neither of you were here in 2008, 2010, but we did the building issue, and then boom, 2 years later is now we need money to operate. So, you know, are we going through the same scenario now that we did then? You're going to come and ask us for more money
Sure.
to build stuff and say, well, now we need operating money because we built all this infrastructure and now we're short funds.
One of the major differences between now and then was pure expansion. We have to replace the kids and staff from this building to another building. So a bond issue is dictated by facilities. An operating levy is dictated by 5-year forecast. So it's not like we'd be building 2 additional buildings. We're actually replacing one, and we're going to be moving people out of buildings into these existing buildings. So it doesn't change our 5-year forecast per se. I can't look into a crystal ball and see that what's coming in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But they are not linked necessarily.
Okay.
I would add to that, you mentioned that it was 2 years later that they came back for operating. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Is that
it was 2008 and then 2010.
Yeah, we wouldn't be looking at 2 years. We already have within the plan at least 3.5 years mapped out. We think we can stretch that even further.
Okay. And then if we're not, shuffling kids around, you called it swing schools? Swing space. How are we going to use any facade from this for the new building if students are still in it?
We wouldn't necessarily be using facade from this building. There might be some things that we can use. For instance, that doorway, right above that doorway is in 1868. That might be able to be used. There's things outside that we might be able to use. And if we can't use it from a structural standpoint and the design committee wants to honor that, we can mimic that. I will say there's a fair amount of concrete on this building that I wouldn't want to use again because it's really old and very porous. I would rather, if it's really liked, I would replicate.
Okay.
So,
And it's not a historical structure?
pardon me?
It's not part of a historical register or anything?
I mean, this building is a historical building, but with the Historical Society across the street being fully on board, all board members gave us their support. There's nothing additional we have to go through with the city or county or state to demolish this building. No.
Okay.
And it's not designated as an historical building because of the additions that have been put on over numbers of years.
Okay.
I will say that it would be what's called a historical demolition. It would be slow, methodical, because we know that in this time period, A lot of things were put in cornerstones, time capsules, those types of things. So we would definitely take our time looking for those types of things.
All right.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Good evening, Meredith Lawson Road, 2100 Beltree Drive. My question is regarding the full-day kindergarten. So say, for instance, we have those in the community that their kids are already grown and adults, and they don't really see the benefit of all-day kindergarten. I'm not one of them. I feel like full-day kindergarten is 20 years too late for my kids. But could you please talk to those that are not interested in having full-day kindergarten because their kids are already grown and the benefit of that?
We talk a lot about empathy and seeing things through the lens of someone else. So if currently I'm a parent who's an empty nester, my kids are grown, it wouldn't impact us. But I understand the need for a family that's moving into a community that's looking for something that's going to help them not only financially in their own home because they won't have to pay for daycare, but also is going to give them a sustainable educational experience from the very beginning. I can empathize with that and understand it and support that person. So despite the fact we aren't directly impacted by some things, I think it's important we sometimes step in other people's shoes a little bit as well and see things through their lens. From an educational perspective, you guys, I think everybody kind of knows this. Kindergarten is not what it used to be. When I was in kindergarten, we did a little bit of math, a little bit of language arts, and we played a lot. Our kids do some work. Kindergarten looks more like first grade. They have a curriculum. They have standards they need to meet. We do collaborative groups. We do all sorts of things with kindergarten that were never done 20 years ago. So in order to maintain and keep up with that and make sure our kids are ahead of the curve, that's something we want to make sure we're able to provide. Does that answer your question? And I should also add, full day is not a requirement. So for example, let's say there's a parent who says, you know what, I only want a half-day experience for my kid because they can come home with us and do something at home, which is phenomenal. That's an option they would also have. So we wouldn't take that option away. And I should add, even if we wanted to take that option away, which we don't, state law wouldn't allow us to. We're only required to give a half-day program. You want to show some of the building maybe? Would you guys like to see any parts of the building? You'd be great to lead this. Absolutely. Okay. All right, let's gather and let's walk a little bit.
We're actually, the first thing we're going to do when we see the building is we're going to walk out these doors because I can show you a lot just right out here. So what the situation was then, but unfortunately it's one of those things where we've put money into patching and sealing and all these things trying to get it to just to make it, and unfortunately it's one of those things where a lot of this stuff, like I said, 20-25 years ago, these types of things shouldn't happen.
So a follow-up question is then, how, as investor taxpayers, and how are we guaranteed about the new buildings, or even the new buildings on Summit Road, or any buildings, how do we know they're being cared for in the way they need to be cared for? Because, you know, I see this as an investment.
Sure.
Like my own home, I'm fixing stuff all the time. Right. But I've got time. Sure. So what would you say to us voters to say, we're going to do due diligence on your money and making sure that?
So there's three things that we do in the summer from a big project standpoint. That's roofing, it's facade, and pavement. We are on a rotating schedule to get all those things done in all of our current buildings. So we do roofing when needed, and when we do roofing, we get a 20-year warranty on it. So if anything ever happens to it, it's taken care of. For instance, Graham Road's roof was redone 6 years ago. Whenever there's a problem with it, they come back and they fix it for free. So that's the kind of things that we do. From a facade standpoint, it's the same thing. Whether it's our split face block, which is like Slate Ridge and the Wagner buildings, we seal that every 3 to 5 years. But we base that off of what our engineers tell us. You're starting to get some water penetration, it's time to do that. So it's a marriage between us and our architect of record and getting those inspections done on an annual basis. For instance, Trimco is a company that does all of our roof inspections. And they'll tell us, yeah, your this one, this one, this one, these need to be done this summer. Okay, gotcha. And that's what we do. So it's all summer projects. So when the buildings are empty, that's when we get a lot of that work done. So those are the three main areas: roofing, the facade, thank you, and then the asphalt.
First, can I ask you a question? Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna follow up, and this bond has those, that
PI
fund
yes.
that's going to be created so that those issues can be taken care of without more money. And that fund will always be there to upkeep, not just the new building being built, not just the kindergarten, preschool, every building in the district.
So I have money that I have every year for my summer project fund. This would add to that.
I think it's important to note also with Ashton, it's always been part of what we've done during the summer. We just reached a point now where so many things that need to be fixed, it doesn't fiscally make sense to go ahead and fix those things. So it isn't as if we haven't done things in this building. We've done quite a bit.
Yeah, and another thing that's interesting about this building, like the Slate Ridge, Taylor Road, some of these other buildings, those all came up at once. There's so many additions to this building, and it's to the point now where the entire roof structure just needs rebuilt. Whole new roof line, not just one section. Like when we look at Livingston, I know that, okay, in 2 years I've got to get this section done because it's time for me, because it's been reset on its schedule. This building, just like I said, 20, 25 years ago, this stuff should have started.
Chris, can I just ask you, because we've talked about this in buildings and grounds a little bit, maybe you could just touch on it, because we have found this in some buildings, but, 153 years ago, or even, more recently, some of the technologies are not the same as they are today. And I think that plays into, how much we can fix in the building, correct?
So, one great example is in the basement of this building, which you've got to like Halloween to go down there. We have two main sewage lines in there. I can't remember if they're 6 inch or 8 inch. But if we were to build today, the same size building, we'd be at least 12 inch. So we're spending money on an annual basis jetting those out. And that's just sewage. We have water lines that are cast iron, that are corroding on the inside, so we have to pay to get those things flushed out. It's just everything, not everything, but a lot of the things that were used back when these buildings were built, was 1868 and 1925, it's out of date now. It's just done differently.
Are we going to run into asbestos issues, or has everything been abated previously?
Well, per Ohio law, if we were to demolish this building, it would have to go through asbestos abatement. That has to, I think it's every 5 years that you have to have that done, and we don't have asbestos now, but because we'd be demolishing it and exposing old parts of the building that have been under plaster and other things, asbestos abatement has to happen with any tear down. Like just the modulars we had out here behind Graham, I had to do asbestos abatement for those as well. It's just part of the process.
Real quick. So you touched on this a little bit regarding the Livingston campus. It's an older building in some parts of Livingston. Does it make more sense to ask for more money if we know that, eventually Livingston gonna have to get some extra work and love too also?
Sure.
My only problem is coming back for more money.
So
You
it's
know,
great.
we
It's a
have
great
not-
question.
Yeah.
Because that is our biggest building. So 2 years ago, we did a facade renovation. So I talked about roofing, facade, and pavement. 2 years ago, we fixed the facade on the outside. They did a great job. So now we took care of all the inside issues because we took care of the outside. We're on a roofing schedule of redoing roofing, and I believe it was 3 years ago we redid the asphalt. That building's good to go. That building is going to be standing for a long time. It's in good shape. It's built in the right time period. It's old enough that it has that age to it, but it's new enough that you have electric through the walls and those types of things. Yeah. That building is in very good shape.
Got good sewer lines
Yeah.
and nothing's cast iron.
Yeah. Great question. Yes.
I didn't see any mention of 9X. because 9X, I mean, that's a lot of kids we have crammed into such a small space.
Sure.
Because I've substituted there before. And, you know, last year wasn't bad with COVID and you only had half the kids, but I mean, 2 years ago it was a nightmare with the number of kids in the hall and stuff. And I didn't see any mention of being able to maneuver 9X around and give those kids more space. And I know we've had a lot of
So,
attitude issues and conflicts and fights and issues, and part of it's related to the space.
yeah, so that is the facility of Livingston is not directly impacted by this bond. That's not to say that the PI money isn't going to help with that. But 9X and, I mean, really any grade level is impacted by the ebb and flow of students that go in and out of that grade level. I would say that the first year was a learning experience for everybody. You know, staff, administration, students. And I think it turned out to be a really good year. Last year obviously was different for everybody because of COVID. I would tell you this year has been really, really good. Really, really good at 9X.
No, my daughter goes there and she says there's fights every day.
Those are things that I can't,
Okay.
that's not my purview. Nor is that something that's directly affected by the bond. But
But there again, that's a space issue because of the tightness of the number of kids in that space, right?
I think that if you look at the class size and the amount of classes there are, it falls right in line with any other high school classroom. It's just that they happen to be in one area.
Okay.
But probably more questions for probably somebody who's more suited to answer those types of questions.
And we can address those. We weren't going to jump into, the entire district in terms of what we're doing district-wide. This was kind of a conversation about this particular bond and the project we have in front of us. We can certainly have that conversation as well. I think Mr. Ragland's doing a phenomenal job of getting 9X off the ground this year. I've been in the building. I have not seen evidence of that, nor have I had anything come across my desk saying that that's an issue. But we certainly can ask those questions and find out.
All right. Any other questions while we're outside experiencing this wonderful breeze? We can check out a couple other places, but this really kind of shows you. Now, if you were to come during a really bright day, you can actually, you'll be able to see the sunlight through some brick throughout the building. Is what it is.
In case you guys don't know, Ms. Coley teaches in this building, so she knows it far better than we do because she lives it every day.
So yeah, well actually, I think second floor would be a good spot.
Yeah, people can go to the second floor, there's a couple spots.
Is it two?
Oh, yeah? Eyes white. You can see this wall and you can see that the brick is actually exposed. The sides, there's nothing that can be done. You could try to plaster over this. There's nothing that you can really do with this.
Yeah, if you don't fix the water on the outside,
Right.
it's always just gonna.
I mean, we can continue to try to cover this, but the outside and the water getting in between the walls, this is what you're dealing with.
Yeah, so this is obviously one example, but this, you could press repeat in southern rooms of the building that are like this.
Along this whole,
Yeah.
this floor from top to bottom is like this. This is just the example.
I think it bears repeating the idea that I heard you mention earlier was the idea that this is not a dangerous situation.
Right.
It's not.
It's unappealing, and we don't want our kids to continue to be educated in this kind of environment, but it is not in and of itself a danger to their health and well-being. I feel like that, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
And so it can be scary to see. I just want to make sure that was still.
Another thing that I didn't mention is if you look down, you'll see a floor that is 1 year old. So here and out in the hallway, a week before school started last year,
2 years ago.
2 years ago, Wow.
I know, well, yeah, tell me about
We came in and all of the floor tiles had popped up, kind of like the Massa's Pizza pepperoni. And what had happened was it exposed the wood underneath. It was not marine grade wood plywood. It was just plywood, so it couldn't tolerate wood. So that's yet another one of those things you can add to the list of. All that needs replaced. So keep in mind that was a week before school started. So we had to have very quick action. I believe we had a special board meeting for that.
Yes, we did.
And thankfully, the company was able to come in and do evenings and weekends. And they put in all new subflooring and put down all of this vinyl. And it's great, but it's just a little glimpse into what I know is in the rest of the building. The section we're in right now is not the oldest part of the building. That's over there. So.
But it's the section where we have a lot of sewer problems on this side, and a lot of that.
Chris, can I ask another question that I've seen kind of pop up? If I see black in one of these areas, does that always mean that that is black mold?
No.
Okay.
So
Can you explain that?
That black over there is not mold at all. It's not. I mean, it's in no way, shape, or form mold. Mold can be black and not be black mold. So the term black mold has a very negative connotation. It's not a negative connotation, it's bad, because it's very bad. We don't have black mold in this building. We will know through air tests and things like that. So no, we do not have black mold. We may at some point have mold that's black, though we don't right now. So.